You're listening to Girls with Grafts, a burn community podcast created by Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, a leading nonprofit dedicated to supporting the burn community. In this podcast, we'll talk with burn survivors, share resources to help with supporting and improving burn recovery, and discuss how to prevent burn injuries. Here are your hosts, burn survivors and Phoenix Society's marketing team, Amber Wilcox and Rachel Anderson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Girls with Grafts. I am Rachel Anderson, and I'm one of your co-hosts today, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Amber Wilcox.
Welcome, everyone. So great to be back for another beautiful episode of Girls with Grafts. Before we kick off this exciting podcast today, we want to send over a special thank you to our Season 1 podcast sponsor, Pritzker Hagman.
Yes, and today we have two special guests. I always love when we have more than just one person on. It's nice to have, more faces, even more voices on the podcast. So I'm really excited today to introduce a son and mother duo. So we are joined by Zachary and DJ Sutterfield. Zachary is a burn survivor, a fire safety advocate, and a burn survivor ambassador for Sons of the Flag. On July 20th, 2018, Zach was involved in an apartment fire in San Marcos, Texas. He was critically injured and received third-degree burns to 68% of his body, double amputations to his hands, and a traumatic brain injury. And like I mentioned, we have his mom here as well, and she is also a caregiver and a friend, and she's a fire safety advocate and also works as the family resource coordinator for Sons of the Flag. So thank you, Zach and DJ, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
It's so great to have you. Zach, I want to start off. I know some of our community is a little bit familiar with your story. I know we've just met today, and so I'd love it if you could take us back to July 2018 and maybe tell us a little bit about your accident and kind of what happened.
Absolutely. So I had transferred to Texas State University just 10 days prior to my incident. I was just down there to get an apartment, sign up for college classes, fill out the FAFSA forms. And on the 10th day, someone had set my apartment complex on fire. It went up in about 180 seconds. I jumped from the second story. I landed on my head, received third-degree burns to 68% of my body. I spent about 18 months in the hospital, inpatient, outpatient care, and double amputations to both my hands, 30 some odd skin graft surgeries and everything in between. But I'm here, I'm happy about it, and by golly, I'm a force to be reckoned with.
Well, thanks for sharing your story with our community. I know many of our survivors can probably relate to your accident, and so we really appreciate you and your mom being here today to share your story with our community.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We're really happy to be here.
Yes. And DJ, I want to hear a little bit about your, experience, especially when did you first learn about Zach's injury and where were you and what was your first immediate step?
So please excuse me if I get emotional.
We're going to be crying a little bit.
It's okay. There's been lots of crying on this podcast, so it's all right.
Zachary's best friend called us the early morning, July 20th, and he said, the apartment was on fire and that he couldn't get a hold of David, Haley, or Zach. And David and Haley were Zach's roommates, and they passed away in the fire. Along with 3 other kids. So, we're in San Angelo, Texas, and I thought, I'm just going to go pick up my kid. He doesn't have an apartment anymore. He's going to have to come home. So we grabbed a few things and we started heading towards San Marcos. And along the way, I had our oldest son calling Zach and trying to find him, calling hospitals because we still hadn't found him at this point. And about 100 miles outside of San Antonio, we got the phone call from my oldest son that Zach had been medevaced to Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. and that he was in critical condition. They didn't expect him to survive, and that we needed to get there as soon as possible. So we did, and from that day on, it was touch and go for the first several months. We didn't know if Zach was going to live. We didn't know how bad the traumatic brain injury was. He became a double amputee within the first week of the fire. And I learned how to be his caregiver. I was a medic in the Army years and years ago. And having that experience, I just started being his caregiver at the hospital. The staff taught me what to do, and I got to go through the debriding process and doing wound care and all that good stuff. And I still do to this day. I'm his caregiver, and as you would like to say, his pain in the butt.
I know right before we started, we asked him of how he would like us to describe you, and that was the first thing that he said. So could you say she's in that pain in the butt? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? So Zach, I guess first and foremost, what does caregiving look like today? I think there's a couple of things to unpack there, right? You did, aside from a burn injury, also have a traumatic head injury, which I thank you for your willingness to be able to talk about, because I know our community that does sometimes happen, right, with having kind of a traumatic brain or head injury as a result of recovery. So do you want to talk a little bit about what that recovery was like from both the burn survivor and the traumatic head injury, but what that looks like today?
Sure. So, initially when I was waking up in the hospital, it was very surreal to me. It felt like a dream. I had what we called a reset, so I could only remember about 5 minutes before my brain would forget everything, and then I would ask the same questions again and again and again. It's a lot better today, but I still have stuff that I struggle with. I still, check the doors 5 to 6 times at night. I have to make sure that the oven's off, little idiosyncrasies that kind of attribute to, burn care and also burn safety and fire safety. I'm kind of a real stickler about. It's better though, and same with the grafts and same with the burns. I'm a lot better than I was 4 years ago this time. So it's just continually got better. I've just had to make the most of it and really learn what to do, how to adapt, and how to make the most of everything that life has thrown at me.
And I'm sure recovery has ebbed and flowed, right? As a survivor, we have some really great days, and we have some days that we can really struggle with. Mom, I think as a caregiver's perspective, what is the last, I think you said 4 years, right? So what has the last 4 years been like for you?
It's been a struggle. Watching your child go through something like this, or a loved one, is very difficult. You want to just fix it. That's all I wanted to do, was fix it. And, burns, you can't fix that overnight. And you can never really fix burns. The traumatic brain injury, that was difficult. At one point in time, he was waking up, coming in and out of consciousness. And at one point in time, he was talking like he was 4 years old. So we didn't know exactly how bad his brain injury was.
Or what's that?
Yeah, we didn't know, what kid are we getting back? And I don't mean to say that and be rude or anything, but we didn't know what his future looked like at that point. And it's something, we worried about. He's done really great as far as adjusting, but it was difficult. Zach, like you said, he would have a reset, and he was scared to death of the showers, and we couldn't use the word shower for the longest time. Even to this day, he doesn't like the word shower.
I didn't either, so I can relate.
Thank you. I think you understand. It's just that trigger of, oh no, don't say that word.
So, but he's doing better. It's just, it has been a long journey, and it's not. I mean, as y'all know, burns don't just recover. There's constant changes. So you're constantly having to take care of him. The skin breaks down. He has to be very careful with certain things. And then on top of those, he's a double amputee. So learning how to become independent again has been the big goal for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how long, Zach, were you, in the hospital that first time, right after the injury? And what would you say was the hardest part about your recovery? I know it's probably hard to just pick one, but what would you say was the hardest part?
So initially I spent 18 months inpatient, right?
Wait, July 20th, 2018 to February 1st, 2019, he was inpatient. From February 1st, 2019 till October 26th, 2019, he was outpatient. So we just went to the hospital every day, working on his traumatic brain injury, working on wound care, doing surgeries.
So, I spent so much time in the hospital that I always thought I was going to be destitute to staying there. The hospital staff became family. But the hardest thing that I had to, come to acceptance of was my new body, the new me, being able to look in the mirror with a semblance of pride, that it took me, years to be able to look in the mirror and be very happy with myself. So, I can do most things with my hands now. I'm pretty independent, but, the self-image and the idea of self is still the one that I deal with. That's the hardest.
You talk about the S word, right? And the shower word, and that that also triggers me. And I know there's a lot of survivors. Do you want to talk about maybe ways that how did you, I'm sure you do shower today, right? And then, understanding that can be, I had a really hard time overcoming that. And I know how I kind of overcame that, but do you want to talk about what that looked like for you, Zach, and how that process went?
So, in the hospital, outside of my room, there's a big board that said, "Do not say shower, say bath." Because if you said the word shower, I was going to panic. With a traumatic brain injury, I was going to freak out a little bit more. So, it was learning the words that wouldn't trigger me. And even to this day, I still say, I'm going to go take a bath when I'm going to go take a shower. It's just a little easier for me. It doesn't give me the memories of degrading, the memories of the hospital. I can take a shower fine now, and it doesn't freak me out. It's just the memories of the word that freaks me out. So, changing the dialect, changing how you view it, all that kind of stuff helps me to live a better life and a more functional life.
It's such a powerful message because, right, it isn't just something that is easy to overcome. It does still bring back those memories. So I like how you reframed that. That's a really important message that, and I think when you compound, right, your traumatic brain injury on top of that, you think of those things that were real triggers for you. So yeah, I want to understand a little bit more about your brain injury and kind of how today, what are some of those common challenges that you feel like, or stepping stones that you've had maybe in accomplishment over this time, the last 4 years?
Awesome. Yeah. So, initially what had happened, I jumped from the second story and I landed on the right side of my head. And that's where I received a brain injury, and the burns from the apartment fire. Initially I had to have several craniotomies where they removed parts of my skull to alleviate the swelling. I was without a skull piece for like about a year and a half.
Yeah, right before he got
discharged, they finally did a craniotomy. So, my traumatic brain injury is a lot better today than it was, but I still have triggering events. I have things that like lapses in memory. I have OCD-ish traits that I've picked up because, I can't remember if we've locked all the doors or if we've turned the oven off or if, everyone's where they need to be and everything's in its place. So today it looks more like we have a family wall on our phone where we text, "Hey, all the doors are locked, you're safe." And learning to live and how to live in that way where it's like, okay, my brain doesn't remember, but I have to rely on my mom, my dad, my friends to help me in this new aspect of my life where I'll wake up at 2 a.m. I'll be like, "Are the doors locked? Is everything done?" And I can check my phone and I'm good. So it's slowly adapting and getting used to the new normal.
I love that you're adapting to the new normal, because we hear that so much, Rachel, of right, like what is that new normal? And so it sounds like mom and your friends are all helping you get there.
Well, I don't want to give her too much credit, No, she's been incredible. She, as soon as she could, she started taking care of me, being my caretaker. And even to this day, if I have wounds that open or if I have somewhere I need to be, she's kind of my second memory and, a kick butt nurse.
She sounds like it.
Yes, exactly. So what does recovery look like today? Are you still getting surgeries for your burns? For what does the brain injury, what does that recovery look like? What's kind of like your day-to-day now?
So currently, I just received my 33rd surgery. They opened the web spacings on my hand, gave me an ear, a few fat cell injections, and my nose and my lip. I got a nose job and a lip job.
I love the humor you've got associated with it. There's that.
I like to tell people I'm basically a Kardashian, But, life right now is basically just getting back to normal. I'm still in school. I have a month until I graduate, which I'm very excited about.
That's so exciting.
I'm writing a memoir. I'm taking, my life back, and I'm taking control of everything that I can. Public speaking, traveling, really spreading the message of fire safety, and learn from me. Let me be that learning, let me be the beacon of light of fire safety, of like, hey, let's learn from Zach. Let's learn from what happened to him and make sure that, we build a better path for the people behind us.
Zach, what's your degree in, if you don't mind me asking?
It is a Bachelor of Arts in English with a minor in sociology.
Well, look at you go. Mom, you must be very proud.
I am very proud because, he left our home to pursue his education. And that was one thing that me and my husband worried about was, will he ever get to go back to school? Will he ever have the life that he was wanting so bad? And he's taking control of it. He's very stubborn, But I'm extremely proud of him for staying focused and working through the brain injury and trying his best to learn. And, I just can't wait to see what the future looks like for him.
That's awesome. I'm definitely excited to read your memoir and see what else is coming from you, Zach. That's exciting.
My future's so bright, I need shades,
Zach, so I've heard a lot of survivors talk about how writing can be healing for them. How do you find that you started to write this memoir out of that passion for writing? Do you like writing, or was it more of like your hope to get a message across?
I think it's a good culmination of all of those things. Being an English major, being someone that loves to read, I've always had an affinity for writing. I did speech debate in high school. I love to write. I've been like an English nerd most of my life. But you compound that with a message that is very pertinent and a message that needs to be heard, especially with this new generation of kids going to college. I think it's something that needs to be heard, and it needs to be delivered. And, through my story and through what I've gone through, I'm hoping that I can deliver that message of fire safety. The one thing I tell everyone that will listen to my story is, the last time I received any sort of fire education was 5th grade from a man in a dog costume, Sparky. And that was that. So it's kind of my mission and my goal. And, my life's goal is to reintroduce fire safety and fire education. And I love what I do. And I think it's just the path that God set me on.
That's awesome. And I know which dog you are talking about because I had that same education.
Absolutely.
And we actually had NFPA on not too long ago, right? And they talked about how, when we were kids, I saw Sparky the dog and got all these messages of fire safety when I was in elementary and middle school. And then when I went into college and as I've got older as an adult, I don't know if it's that just, life happened, but I started to not, right? Like there wasn't a focus on those things in my life. And especially as an adult, how important that is, right? Of now I have my own home. How do I check my smoke alarms? How do I make sure things we forget those things, or maybe not even forget, but that's just not a focus. And we talk about it so much as kids, but I think it's a really important message that we carry, not just when Sparky comes to visit us in elementary, but throughout our life, right?
Yeah. Well, I talk to firefighters all the time by proxy of my job, right? And they say the only time that people really touch up on fire education is 5th grade with Sparky, and then when you get put into a retirement home, where you have to know your exits, you have to know all these things. So there's this huge gap in your life where you're right, you do go to college, you enter the workforce, you buy your own home, and it's like, whoa, what do you mean I have to check the smoke alarms? My mom and dad always did that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and a lot of it is also knowing to look before you lease. We didn't realize that Zach's apartment was owed. We didn't realize, what we should have been looking for. I mean, I had boxes upon boxes of,
hamburger helper,
pots and pans and dishes and ramen. We had been, gathering things, but not once did we see on that list smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, a drop down ladder because he was on the 2nd floor because Zach's apartment was not upgraded. It was an older building, so it didn't have sprinklers. It didn't have firewalls,
centralized alarm system. All the things that, attribute to making sure people get out safely and that live comfortably and equitably.
That's so important because when you look at your college packing list, right? How many times do you see like those sample college packing lists that include, right?
Yeah.
Things that you could bring with you to help in those emergencies. So that's a really awesome message, DJ.
And go ahead. I was just going to say, even too, like when you're going on vacation or renting a vacation home or Airbnb and whatnot, sure, it may say on the listing that it has smoke alarms, but when's the last time that those smoke alarms were tested? You have no idea.
Absolutely.
And those are just little things that we've learned over the last 4 years. Because as a parent, we ask ourselves all the time, how did this happen? And it happened because we weren't educated. It happened because there's somebody mean out there in this world. But it could have easily been a grease fire that got out of control, and it would have probably been the same result as far as the building was just owed, and it didn't have that fire safety, surrounding it or anything. And if we can share our story to prevent that from happening, that's the big thing. That's all I can kind of hold on to as far as why did this happen? Because we have a big enough voice that we're willing to make a change. So I guess we were the right people. Zach had to go through a lot, but he's a very strong individual and he can get this message across. So, sometimes everyone says, like God prepares you for life. And he did. He prepared Zach to be able to speak and
you
to
be
strong.
Able to take care of me.
I was a medic, so.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you were a medic.
Yeah. So, and actually the hospital he was at is where I trained in the Army to become a medic. So it was going
very full circle. Yeah.
And, I'm grateful to be able to have him here to get this message across.
It's interesting because one of our second episode was actually with NFPA. And even some of the things that they were telling us, I remember like getting off the podcast and going to my husband and being like, I just didn't know. Right. And then like, I think even just as adults, we just don't. And now it's funny, we went to a concert like a couple of weeks later and I'm like looking, right, like where are the sprinklers? Where is the door? And now I think since I know and I'm aware and I've known people that have experienced these types of things, now I find myself like looking when I'm in, and like my husband said to me, like, well, we're sitting right next to the exit door. Right. Like those are the things I think that I now think about, but until I was told or met someone that had been through it, I don't think I even realized like when we're walking into a building or when you're living somewhere, like these are questions that can and should be asked, right? Before kind of putting yourself in this scenario. So I think your message here today is really important, but also has an impact, right? Of knowing that someone that has experienced that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. we hope that it makes a difference one day. We're hoping that if we keep beating down some of these doors, eventually somebody will open it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys, I have allergies going on.
No worries.
My throat is itchy.
No worries at all. Well, DJ, I did want to ask you a few questions. So over, the past 2 years, you have taken on the role as a caregiver, but we know from caregivers that that's no easy task. That's it's a full-time job plus more, because not only are you trying to help Zach physically recover, you also are going through it. You're going through, recovery as well. So what was the past 2 years like, for you, and how did you kind of handle not only caring for Zach, but caring for yourself in the past 2 years or 4 years? I don't know why I keep saying 2, sorry, over the past 4 years.
I think the biggest thing was at the hospital, the nursing staff, they were always harassing me. Did you eat today? Did you do this? Did you do that? And I'm like, I'm not worried about me. I'm not worried about me. My friends, because we lived at a Fisher House Foundation home. I don't know if y'all know what that is. Basically, it's for military families and retirees. We lived at it's kind of like the Ronald McDonald House. So we lived there, and there were other families there going through trauma as well, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of just surrounded myself with the medical staff, my friends at the Fisher House, and I built my own tribe. And I think having all of those people made me remember, hey, did you eat today? I did finally learn that I had to take care of myself, because if I wasn't healthy, it wasn't doing him any good. Mm-hmm. As far as the mental health, it took me a long time to finally get help for that. Because, for the longest time I kept going, well, I'm a mother. This is just normal. The way I'm feeling is normal, and I just need to suck it up. And it started affecting us. It started affecting me. I started getting angry and anxious, and just so many things were going on that I finally had to get mental help. So I would recommend, if someone is going through this, that they get mental health on board as they're going through it.
Because I think we focus so much on the survivor, right? So it is so important for the survivor to receive that help, but also the caregiver going through it, right? Of knowing that there's so much that's going on with your life too. So the fact that you were able to recognize that is just such a beautiful thing, right? Of that, like, hey, this affected me too. And I think it's an important message that, for advice for other caregivers out there, to seek that help.
Well, I think sometimes the caregiver is like, oh, it all happened. For the longest time, I kept saying, it happened to Zach. It happened to Zach. It happened to Zach. But it happened to our entire family. Mm-hmm. And our family was having to go through this. Was it the same type of pain? No, not compared to what he felt and what he went through. But the pain that we were going through, there were no scars. You couldn't see that something had happened to us. Mm. And then, of course, when, we found out it was a crime, that was other steps we had to go through. But I would just really recommend anybody in the caregiver role, even in the nursing role, anyone that's involved with someone going through trauma, you got to take care of yourself before you can actually help that person you're trying so badly to help.
Because we hear that, right? I hear that in advice all the time, but until you really experience that or hear it from someone who's been through it, right? Of like, it hits, I think, differently when you hear that. So thank you for bravely sharing that today, because I know that can be a difficult thing to share. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to know a little bit about Sons of the Flag. So I hear, Zach, you're an ambassador, but also DJ, I saw that you're family resource coordinator. So do you guys want to share a little bit about that? I'd love to hear about Sons of the Flag.
Sure. So Sons of the Flag is a nonprofit that was started by a Navy SEAL by the name of Ryan Birdman Parrott to help burn survivors initially who were affected by war get the health care they receive. healthcare that they desperately need too. And so it was later opened up to military members, first responders, and their families. And when I got to a point in the hospital where I was considered okay, I had my neurosurgery, I was alive, I was as good as I was going to get there. We reached back out to this organization that had contacted my mom and been like, hey, we can take care of him when you're ready. And that's exactly what they did. I've gone down for 3 surgeries, 3 separate times down to Tampa, Florida at the Tampa General Hospital. Their burn surgeon there, he's written a book on burn plastics. He taught at Harvard for a number of years. He's the best of the best. And so we went down there. They rebuilt my ear, nose, lips, chest, back, hands, just about everything that you can imagine. And what's so nice about them is they do 4 to 5 procedures under one anesthetic trip. So I got to do probably a year's worth of surgery in one go. And it's really allowed me to reclaim my life. And, to other burn survivors, this organization is there to give you hope and, hopefully help you like they helped me. And so that's what I like to go around and I like to tell people. I'll chat anyone's ears off all day long about it. Between, Sons of the Flag and fire safety, I think people are like, okay, Zach, let's talk about football.
Well, it's funny because, Sons of the Flag I'm not familiar with, but I am familiar with Tampa General Hospital. I am in Florida, and I don't know if you saw Dr. Smith, but Dr. Smith is was the surgeon that helped. So I was treated at Orlando Health, but they have laser at Tampa General. So my laser surgeries were with Dr. Smith's team at Tampa General. So I'm very familiar with that hospital. It's a beautiful hospital and a great bunch of folks over there. So I am super familiar with that. So that's really awesome to hear that you're still undergoing procedures there. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. So you fly down.
We've driven every time. We've driven.
Well, there you go.
Well, the first time it was, COVID, and we decided, we don't want to get on an airplane. The planes were canceling everything. And we're a road trip family. We love a good road trip. Yeah, so we decided to travel down there in the car. And we've done it every time since because, one, when you reach Tampa, you still need a car to get around, get groceries, all that kind of stuff. But when we got there, the team, Dr. Smith, Julian Prevost, they really told me, they're like, we can get you to be living a good life. The thing that the head surgeon, Dr. Prevost, told me when he was checking out my hand, he looked at me and he said, we can get you to hold a beer, kid. And so that won me over. I was like, okay, this is my kind of place. And
priorities.
Between the surgeons, the phenomenal healthcare, and the nurses and doctors that took care of me, I couldn't have asked for a better place to recover and get my life back on track.
Well, and I don't think people realize that we are very limited in this country on burn plastic surgeons. Burn plastics is way different than plastic surgery. I mean, you're reconstructing someone that has been totally injured. The skin is injured. So you've got to have someone specialized in it. And that's what Sons of the Flag does, is they have a special team that we go to now. At Brooke Army Medical Center, when we were there, it's for trauma. Like, it's immediate life-saving triage. Let's get you back and, up and running. But then where are you going to run to when you get through with that? We got lucky and found out about Sons of the Flag, and I contacted them, and they were on board. They're wonderful to us,
They basically become a surrogate family. I can call up Sherry, which is the CEO, and be like, I'm having a really tough day. And she's like, well, me too. Let's talk about it. Or even Ryan, the previous CEO who founded Sons of the Flag, I call him Uncle Ryan. He took me under his wing when we were traveling down to Florida. He said, Zach, we got your 6. We're going to take care of you. And that meant the world to me. It really, it gave me hope for my future. And then, 2 years after that, they hired me to be a burn survivor ambassador, and I get to work with them, which is even crazier.
That's awesome. So Mom, you're also a family resource coordinator for them, correct?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your role.
I'm here to support families. When we find out of an injury, because I believe it's in 28 states, we have task force members. Most of them are firefighters, and so they kind of let us know, hey, there was a firefighter injured, or this person was injured, or I've had people on Facebook reach out and say, hey, we've got a kid here injured. Can you reach out to them? So that's my goal, is not so much for the survivor, but for the families. I'm there if they need someone to talk to, if they have questions.
Shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, sometimes it's just letting them know that they're not alone. And that, yes, this is absolutely normal, what you're feeling, what you're going through. I'm not medically qualified. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not any of that. I'm just an ear to listen to. And also, we have several different programs with Sons of the Flag. We even have EJ's Kids, which that one's out of Delaware, I believe it is, for pediatric burns. And it's just kind of giving someone hope. Support, yeah.
And the resources necessary, because, when I got injured, we didn't really know about Sons of the Flag until a fire marshal from San Marcos reached out to my mom. He was like, hey, I don't know if you know of this organization, but I think that they can help Zach. And so on top of everything else he does, she is also, a beacon of hope for so many families.
That's such a full circle, beautiful, opportunity for both of you, right? And to get connected. I put the link in the, I will put it in the podcast description, but also, is that the correct URL there, sonsoftheflag.org?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. So anyone that wants to get connected, that will definitely show up in our show description. And connecting through the contact us form on that website is the best way to get connected with them.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And if someone's needing help, they just need to go on there and they fill out a form. It's very simple. It's not anything like your social security number or anything like that. It's basic information about you and your burns. And if they want to reach out to me, I think there's a link underneath our information. If someone needs help, I don't want anyone to ever feel as lonely as I felt that first few months. And I want people to be able to say, oh, his skin's breaking down. Is that normal? Yes, that's normal. Oh, why are they doing this to him at the hospital? That's normal. Every burn unit does it differently from my understanding, from what we've seen. But basically, it's the same. It's different product and different lotion. But it's pretty much the same steps and stuff that we went through that we hope to help other families. And they may not need anything. They may just want to talk. And that's okay too.
We know the power of peer support. That's come up a couple of times in our episodes here. And, Phoenix Society has those resources as well. So to connect with other peer supporters, we know that is super important, right? DJ, you bring up a great point. If I had somebody who, could say to me, yeah, that's okay. That happens. I think, is important, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Because I remember when it first happened, I was online and, I didn't know anything about burns. And, as a medic, I basically took care of healthy military members.
Neosporin was, I think, the most that she'd ever done.
Well, no, I had done some wound care, but no burns, no amputations, and definitely no brain injury. So I was constantly online looking up things. And sometimes that just takes you down the wrong path.
Yep.
Because I do remember finding you guys when this first happened. And it was like, I got on there and I was like, okay, this is a safe place to get information.
Right. And that can be hard, right? WebMD can be a dangerous place. We all know that. So, I self-diagnose sometimes there and it's never a good outcome. So finding the good resources is definitely important.
Most definitely.
Well, that organization, Sons of the Flag, sounds amazing. And you guys both are very passionate about it. And I know another area you both are passionate about is fire safety. So can you just tell us a little bit more about, we talked a little bit, but you want to share your story to advocate and, educate others. But what are some things maybe you wish you would have even known before the injury?
Well, I think this is a universal one, but look before you lease. When I went down to Texas State San Marcos, I had $1,500 in my bank account that I had saved up, and I was looking for the cheapest apartment. I was just looking for somewhere to lay my head down at night, and I was very naive in thinking every place that I was going to look at was safe, right? I had lived on military housing my entire life. I had lived in, hotels that had sprinklers. I really thought that wherever I was going to lay my head down at night was safe. And I think, telling this next generation of students, workers, anyone that's going out into the world to say, look before you lease. It's your right as someone who is going to pay for that apartment, pay for that multi-residential living place, to know when it was built, whether it meets the current fire safety codes, whether the municipality is outdated, and also find the resources of fire extinguishers, drop-down ladders, knowing that a fire extinguisher isn't to fight a fire, right? It's to get you out of the fire. And all the things that are necessary in the scenario of a fire that, I wish, my 20-year-old brain, when I was going off to college, I was more worried about, who's going to drive home from the football game because it's not going to be this guy. I'm going to get crazy partying. And, I was more worried about that than I was, all right, this is how to use a drop-down ladder. This is how to use these things. And so I like to share the message of, I was very naive, and I want to teach the world about what I didn't know so that they're a little safer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we all can fall into the mindset of sometimes of, oh, well, it won't happen to me. Like, yeah, I may hear that story, but it won't happen to me. I'm fine. I know. Or like, even to this day, sometimes I think like, well, do I truly know my escape plan at the house? Because in my mind, I'm like, I think I could figure it out, but do I actually know how to figure it out when you only have 2 minutes to get out of a fire? Yep. So yeah. And it never helps, or it never hurts to, practice and go over those things. And even if you're moving into, a brand new building, maybe no one's even lived there before, it's still important to, ask those questions and get those answers.
Absolutely. Yes. And, I love to tell people it's your right to know as someone who is going to be renting that apartment, whether that apartment is safe. And don't put your money down until you know that apartment is safe.
Yeah. And DJ, for, other parents, what advice would you give to them? Maybe their child's going off to school soon, or even if, just in general, what advice would you want other parents to know?
When we were getting him ready to go to college, just like you said, there's checklists, right? Pots and pans, and, oh, you're going to need a comforter, and, oh, this and that for the apartment. And we were gathering things. And we, of course, I was doing the no drinking and driving, and don't be doing drugs. And, if you're going to have sex, be protected. So all of those things have been, forced into our head as parents. Like, watch your kids for this, watch your kids for that, teach them this, teach them that. Not once did fire safety ever come into play when we were talking to him about moving out. I never thought about it. It never crossed my mind that it would happen to us, right? It did. And now that it has happened, I want parents to look at everything, check the apartment out, or even if it's a house rental, you can get basically inspections on apartments and things like that are public records. So look into the records of where you're sending your child. Is it a good place? Is it a good neighborhood? There are so many other things, not just the fire safety. Like, is there cameras in the parking lot? Because, kids get assaulted a lot, when they go off to school. So there's so many things that now I look back on and I'm like, well, I wasn't prepared for anything. Right. I really wasn't, I wasn't prepared for him to leave that day. And I definitely didn't prepare him for moving to San Marcos. And, now that and it hurts to say that. But if I can,
I think, yeah, no, sorry. I think that's so important what you're saying, because when we look at colleges, even, right, I think about my mom and her saying like, okay, is it a good school? Where are you going to live? Do I have a good bed? Is it comfy? None of those things that we look at colleges had to do with safety or fire safety.
No.
And I think we're so excited or maybe caught up in the moment that we don't stop and say, wait a minute, all of that is great, right? The quality of education and how, but there's also an underlying thing there of like, okay, that those checks are important, but so are the ones of my life, right? Of how safety plays into effect. So I think you have an important message there, right? DGF, safety comes first too, in some aspects. So all of those educational things that they're showing me are great, but asking them, right? Like, where am I going to live? What are the safety codes? Do they have security on campus? Things like that are important.
Yeah.
And how well is the apartment maintained, or the house maintained? Because you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig, and that's pretty much where we're at now. It's just educating people that it may look great from the outside, but I need you to look at the ceiling on the inside. Is there a fire sprinkler? Smoke detectors. And we also need to teach our kids, don't disarm them for any reason whatsoever. If the apartment is a little smoky because you're cooking bacon, that's fine. Let it go off. Don't disarm it. Don't tamper with it. Check your batteries. Check the dates on it, because they're only good for so many years, and it's time to exchange them. And I would encourage a parent to ask as many questions at that apartment complex as they did at the college when they were signing their kid up for university.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier too, is it's not just even about the smoke alarm or the fire sprinkler, but a drop down ladder. And do you know how to use it? Do you know how to actually use a fire extinguisher? Because it's one thing to say you have one next to your oven. It's another to actually know how to use it if you need to.
Exactly.
So and when we go to college, you typically have a roommate. So do your roommates know how to use these things too, and educating them?
Yeah. And are they performing, right? Like we always performed fire drills in school, but are we performing fire drills for colleges and whatnot like that? So I think that's really also important of, like you said, do you know how to use it? Do you know where the exits are if you need them? Do you know what to do in the case of an emergency? So that's all very, very important. So I thank you for sharing that message with us today, because I think that's a message that definitely needs to be, widely looked at our communities. Zach, I have a couple more questions for you. And I think as we approach our time together, but we talk a lot about burniversaries on this podcast, and some folks have different ways, and we're learning all the different ways that survivors celebrate or not celebrate or remember or honor their burniversary. Would you like to share with us a little bit about how you honor that day, or how your family honors that day together?
Sure. I think for a while, at least my first burniversary, I was very adamant of like, this is not a celebratory thing. Why are we in? But now I look at that day as a day that, I conquered that flame. I was brighter than that fire. And so I spend the day with my family, usually cooking a really good meal, probably watching a rerun of 90 Day Fiance.
Don't get us started on reality TV, because Amber and I will go down a rabbit hole.
Zach, we will get along great, because I also love reality TV. Music to my ears.
About enjoying that day, everything that you can about it, and recognizing, my burniversary is also, a day that I had passed. And so remembering, there's the Latin phrase, memento mori, remember your own death, remember that it is fragile, that, you are here for just this. And so I get to enjoy a day with my family, with my dogs, and I try to make the most of what I can. And so my burniversaries are usually celebrated with a good meal, maybe a glass of wine if I'm feeling frisky.
Who doesn't love a good? You like wine and reality TV,
I know,
Zach. I don't know why we're not already friends.
Give me a nice Cabernet and some 90 Day Fiance. It's
all day. Sounds like there's a party at your house after this.
Absolutely, you're all invited.
Maybe it's a few days, but we're on our way.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So aside from 90 Day Fiance and red wine, what other hobbies do you have? I mean, you talked about writing, but what else do you enjoy doing, Zach?
And I see that chessboard behind you. Did I read a People magazine article that you had a tattoo of chess pieces, right?
Yes. It was my first thing that I did when I was 18 years old.
He was rebelling.
I was rebelling. My parents didn't know. I went to a tattoo parlor in the back of a salon, so you know it's on the up and up. I think I had $85, and I was like, I want a pawn and a queen, or a pawn and a king on my feet. And he was like, yeah, sure, man. I don't know what this is about. But I got that tattoo, and, it's something that me and my dad, when I was very young, I think 9 or 10, I learned how to play the game. So I love the game of chess. It reminds me of being a kid, playing with dad, learning the moves, every now and again winning. So I still like to play it, but I spend a lot of my time reading crazy books that I think are weird and fun. I love to go on drives. I have 2 dogs that annoy me, but I love them. So I
love
get to
some pets too.
Yeah.
Have you watched, I guess, since you're a reality TV fan, or a really TV fan, have you watched The Queen's Gambit? I would assume that you have.
I have not.
What?
I know. My best friend, he's in Los Angeles right now, but he's a film guy, and he said that I need to watch it. So I want to watch it with him because we're both chess nerds and we're both like film nerds. So I want to watch it with him.
Well, if you like chess, it's one of my favorites. I will say.
Okay.
Well,
it's gonna get bumped higher on the list of to watch.
We're gonna put in the show notes information about Sons of the Flag. I know that People magazine article that you were featured in. That's how I learned about that love of chess as well. But Mom and Zach, I think we have one final question before we wrap up today. I like to ask our, survivors and their loved ones, what does self-care look like for you? So how would you define that today? So, whether it's Zach, you're experiencing a trigger, or Mom, you just had a tough day. What does that look like for you? How do you practice that self-care?
We're not very good with self-care, but we are good at talking to one another. So
communication is a big thing.
Yeah. Like I could say, oh, I take a nice hot bubble bath, I get my nails done. That's not true. When I need self-care, it's usually I need my family to understand I'm hurting or I'm having a problem. And so for me, my self-care is talking to, Zach and my husband, and just making sure that they understand, okay, this is what I'm going through right now. It's nothing against y'all. If I shut down, this is what's happening. And just knowing that they're there, that is enough self-care for me. I could say we go for walks, we do all that. No, we don't. Sometimes I lay on the floor with the service dog and
cuddle him. That's self-care.
That's self-care. Yeah. Dogs are definitely self-care.
Yeah.
And then of course there's chocolate. I do eat a lot of chocolate.
Who doesn't love a good piece of chocolate? Do you have a favorite kind of chocolate?
I like Baby Ruth.
Little nuts with the chocolate, right?
Yeah, my favorite. And Zach, what do you do for self-care?
I take moments for me, whether it's a podcast I want to listen to like yours, or a new album comes out, or a new audio book. I take time for me and I just decompress while, I may do the dishes while I listen to a book and kind of find my Zen moment. I've been trying to learn how to meditate. I can't say that that's how I do it yet.
So hard.
I'm not good at it.
It's a hard thing to learn.
It really is. Enjoying my moments and enjoying my time is self-care. Cooking is a big thing. I love to cook for people. So sometimes self-care for me is having a friend over and making them the world's best grilled cheese.
I will tell you, when you said reality TV, my husband's always like, why do you watch that trash? And I think for me, self-care is like watching just some mindless TV with a good glass of wine. So I think that should be considered some self-care as well, right? Of like a little bit of trash TV will go a long way for my mental health, I think.
Yeah. And then when I see all of them on reality TV, I realize I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm doing good.
It makes your
DJ,
problems
you're right.
seem a little better.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, thank you, DJ and Zach, both of you, for joining us. I loved having you on. I know that there's going to be great things coming from both of you. Do you have any final words you want to share? Anything before we wrap up?
I enjoyed this so much. Thank you for inviting us to be on here. It's really great to be able to share our story, the little bit of knowledge we do have in this situation, and just to be around other burn survivors. It's having that community. I know that sounds crazy, but
no, not at all.
Not to us.
I would say, if there's any burn survivors listening, just know you always have a burn family with me. We're connected through flame, and we're welded together.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. We want to thank our season 1 sponsor, Pritzker-Hagman, for their sponsorship. The Pritzker-Hagman Burn Injury Legal Team helps burn survivors and their loved ones pursue compensation and justice throughout the United States. And if you have any legal questions, the attorneys at Pritzker-Hagman are ready to help. And you can find out more at legaljourney.guide. Zach, DJ, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so grateful for the opportunity to have spoken with you, heard your story, and connected on all the things that we enjoy doing. So it was such a pleasure. And we hope to maybe see you at upcoming World Burn or any other virtual events in the future. We thank you both so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Girls with Grafts. If you are enjoying this content, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.